Sometimes when I'm thinking about us, before we got lost and we parted, back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight, but this time we're not safe and sound. Not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. Sometimes when I'm reasoning about us, I know you got me, it's so effortless. Back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight, but this time we're not safe and sound. Not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me?
What is up, you guys? It is Tuesday night, and it's time for the news. Welcome to the news, the FPV news with JB and ItsBlunty. How you doing, Blunty?
Great, JB. How's it going?
Oh, doing good, man. I'm very happy to be back with you for another news segment. Is my camera centered up? It's not, is it? Oh no. There we go. Now I'm off center. Oh, it'll be all right. don't. How'd you like the new song, Blunty?
It was great. I think it's
Yeah?
great. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. That's it's good music to start the stream off with. People were suggesting metal, trance. I just don't know if that would be the vibe we're going for.
Yeah. That's pretty much my vibe too, so I like it.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I like pop music. Pop music gets a bad rap. Electro swing house. I don't know.
There's a reason it's catchy. That's what I like to say.
Yeah. Pop music gets a bad rap, but BDB says the song is lame. Too bad, man. Too bad. It's my live stream. It's my song. But the good news is, you don't have to listen to it more than once per night. Luciano V. This is not a Q&A stream, but we will be taking your questions and paying attention to your comments. Luciano V has a very important question, and that is, your hair and beard are so fluffy. Do you want to talk about your routine, or is that like?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. There is no routine. My rule is, and this is going to sound a little weird for people who don't have a lot of hair, but the rule is wash less. If you wash more, all that oil comes off, and then it's dry and brittle. It cracks. It gets gross. Wash less. Like wash every 2, 3, 4 days, and it's way better.
Yeah.
All those oils like help your hair. How's your hair routine?
My hair routine is like every 3 weeks I shave my head. All right. Oh, let's get to the news. What are we doing this week? Let's take a look at the show notes. What are we doing this week, Blunty? We got a lot of stories.
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff going on. So let's run them down real quick. I got an exclusive report from somebody over at Cadex about the Vista shortage that we talked about.
My conspiracy theory about Cadex intentionally withholding Vistas because no one wanted to buy their Nebulas, that turned out to be right?
Yeah.
No. No, but okay.
Yeah, we'll get some info about that. So we're going to talk about the Best Buy GoPro situation, make sure everybody's heard about that. I think a lot of people have experienced some issues trying to return GoPros that they've broken.
Yeah, the GoPro gravy train may be over.
Yeah.
All right.
We've got the Radio Master TX12 has just gone on sale for pre-order. So we're going to talk about that and some features on that guy.
Yeah.
We saw a pull request submitted about the TBS full-size controller, the Mambo. So we'll talk a little bit about that and discuss that.
Yeah, for people who like the Tango but don't like a gamepad style radio like myself, maybe TBS has something for us.
Same for me, yeah. I think I'll be with the full-size until they do something different, that's for sure. We've got the SharkBite pricing. We saw Get FPV and RotorRiot do that, so we can talk about the SharkBite pricing and where that lands in.
And we'll talk about whether that pricing is going to change anybody's opinion of whether SharkBite is what they want to get.
We've got Kabab's new 30mm motors. What size are they? We'll talk about it, but nobody really knows.
They're 30mm, but
they're 30mm.
Tired of being cloned.
We're going to talk about a new product I really think is cool, the LePigeon 7-inch. So that's a neat product. Stick around for that.
The LePigeon, it's a new 7-inch quad that carries a cinema camera, but not like you think.
Yeah. We've got some talk about ExpressLRS. There's been some recent improvements that I think makes it maybe worth flashing your R9 equipment now.
Yeah, well, anything's better than R9. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
We need like a trash frisky minute, trash frisky minute.
No, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to go. I don't want to go too hard. I don't want to lean too hard into that and piss them off more than I already have.
Maybe they'll make their firmwares compatible. Okay. So RadioLink is now supported by the Multiprotocol module. That's been about for a little bit, but I'd like to talk about that just a little bit.
If you're one of the 5 people out there who has a bunch of RadioLink receivers, it's your lucky day.
Yeah. We're going to do our community spotlight. Got some cool stuff going on in the community spotlight. It's a little bit of drama on Reddit. We've got some iFlight maybe sending out 2-piece bells instead of uni-bells, but saying they're uni-bells and not really caring. So
drama on Reddit. Who would have seen that coming? That's
nothing new there. And then the FAA is talking maybe positively about RemoteID, maybe some things we might like to hear. I don't know how I feel about that, but
yeah, we'll see. We'll see. FAA may have given us some good news about RemoteID, but I mean, we'll see. Yeah. All right. Well, let's kick it off with the Cadex Vista shortage. I'm sorry, hold on. I'm managing my windows. So Cadex Vista has been out of stock forever. Actually, it's just come back into stock in the last couple of weeks. Some of them have come into stock. If you're trying to get a Vista, stock up. In fact, it was so bad that some of these ready-to-flies that, like these 4-inch long-range quads that have been coming with the Vista, they were shipping them with nebulas. And some of the vendors changed the listing. Some of them didn't even change the listing. I was hearing from people who said, I ordered such and such a quad and I got a nebula instead of a Vista. People didn't like that. But you actually heard back from Cadex. You just went to the source and asked them instead of making wild accusations like I do.
I figured why not give it a shot, right? So I shot a message out to somebody at Cadex, and I got a response that basically said there is a shortage. They're aware of the shortage, and there's not much they can do about it, but they think they have a solution, and hopefully we'll see more products coming in stock soon. Essentially, it's that Huawei, because the United States blocked Huawei from getting chips from the United States. It seems like China has forced a lot of the chip manufacturers in China to produce Huawei chips. And that means that Cadex was not able to get the chips for the Vistas. And so they had to slow production or not produce any at all for a while. I was assured by contactor that they will have Vistas coming soon. They have a solution for this, but I wasn't told what that solution is.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective into how some of this stuff is interlinked, because DJI, presumably the chips that Cadex doesn't make, the chipsets, for the Vista. There's no way. DJI makes those. And DJI and all big industry in China are really tied in with the Chinese government in a way that we don't expect in the United States. You know, somebody goes to Elon Musk and says, Elon, we need you to make ventilators. And Elon might say yes, and he might say no, and there's not a lot you can do about that. But that's not how it is in China. So there's these Huawei 5G telecommunications. There's all these concerns about whether the Chinese government is using that to spy. And the United States said, no, we're not using Huawei chips. Did that actually go through? I'm not sure that I may be getting some of the details wrong.
Yeah, at least the contact said it was September 15th when it started cutting off and they weren't able to get the chipsets anymore from the manufacturers they normally did. So they just assured me there's some solution for that. But yeah, I would assume somebody's asking in chat. Let's see. If that's something that DJI is probably dealing with, 507RC, you know, I'd assume that's the same thing because as far as I know, the Vistas are manufactured at DJI in Shenzhen.
Right.
So it should be a similar idea, right?
It sounds like what happened, though, is that the Chinese government went to these companies and said, we need you to manufacture these chips instead of your own,
right?
Which they have the prerogative to do because, you know, that's how they work. Random FPV. Random FPV. Why are you not a moderator, dude? Good to see you again. I haven't seen you in forever. I'm making Random FPV a moderator so I don't miss him. Random FPV says, damn, how'd you get Russell Brand on your channel? I do see the similarity.
That's a strong compliment. I do like Russell Brand.
I'm not going to go. I don't think that this live stream is the appropriate place to speculate on whether Huawei is spying, but I also why would that stop me? I think it's a given that if you're a major telecommunications manufacturer selling telecommunications gear into foreign countries, there's no question in my mind that there's backdoors. Now, I guarantee you that there's backdoors in Cisco routers that are sold.
I was literally going to say, I believe Cisco got in trouble for having backdoors not that long ago, like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, something like that, for that exact reason. So, I mean, you have to assume it's the case. Yeah. It's hard to not.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think so. Then I'm not going to weigh in on politically, economically, whatever, whether the ban is the right thing to do. I've heard arguments both ways, and that's definitely off topic. But the question of whether there's backdoors, like, yeah, obviously there's backdoors. What do you think intelligence services do? Anyway. All right. So hopefully more Vistas and maybe a little bit of an explanation as to where those Vistas went. Next on the list, GoPros. And if you're in the United States, at least you get the insurance on your GoPro at Best Buy, and when you break it, you go back with the GoPro and you just say, hey, I broke my GoPro. I've got the insurance. And the people who haven't done this are super. They're like, oh, what do I do? They just give you another one. No big deal, but not
Walk
anymore.
in with a bag of parts and you get a new GoPro.
Pretty much. It is incredibly. And same day. They take it. They give you a gift card. You buy a new GoPro. Out the door. Yeah. But apparently not anymore.
Yeah. People are saying, Zorro made a video about this, really kind of put it out there with some clickbait that wasn't really clickbait because it was 100% true. But a lot of people have been talking about this for a while. Now if you go to Best Buy, it seems like there's two situations going on. Either they're going to tell you that they need to send it to the Geek Squad Tech Support Center, so it needs to get sent out, and then they'll send it back, and then you can pick it back up or get a new one if it's broken enough for them to give you a new one. Or they're just not doing the exchange at all, which is something I've heard as well.
I mean, the insurance has to be honored, right? They can't just be like, no.
I would assume so, but I think there's I think if you read through the clauses, I don't know that it necessarily covers everything like it has been. I think they've just kind of been covering over the whole, as far as I understand it, it's like if you throw it on the ground and break it, they didn't have to cover that previously with the way the rules are written. They have done it because they've decided to do it. And that was a policy they did because people were like, hey, I'm going to go buy a GoPro at Best Buy. But I don't know that they were making any money on this.
I mean, I've always assumed that it was going to come to an end eventually. Yeah. Because it was just, but my theory was that we were such a small drop in the ocean of people. How many people buy a GoPro and they're like, I'm going to be the next action hero, and then they snowboard one time and then they just forget about it, and they all buy insurance and never use it. That's the whole point of the insurance, right? So I just figured we were sliding under the radar. Yeah. Apparently not.
Yeah, I mean, you think about, I don't know if GoPro was subsidizing that or Best Buy was all on Best Buy, but if you think about cost on that thing,
Yeah.
even at the cost of the GoPros at 20 or 30%, if they're somehow getting them that cheap, that's a lot of money they're forking out for people who are getting, what, oh my God, is like 30 or 40 in at this point.
Oh,
So,
Cricket has got to be hundreds.
yeah, right.
So from the people I've talked to, like I was talking to Stingy the other weekend, and he said that in his experience, they send it out to GoPro, and GoPro will try to repair it. But if GoPro can't repair it, then they'll give you credit for the new one. But the whole process takes a couple weeks. Yeah. So Stingy's perspective on it was, it's still a good deal, but I just need to have a couple more GoPros in rotation.
Right.
I can't count on being able to get it the same day.
I think then, though, you... Go ahead.
Carbon Cage FPV, you're 100% right. Cricket, this is your fault. You pushed it over the edge, man. Someone was looking at the spreadsheet over at Best Buy Corporate, and they were like, what is this store in Baltimore with 500 GoPro? Who is? Somebody take care of this. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that, like I said, I think they probably were losing money on this. At some point, you have to think, or the amount of money they were making maybe didn't make sense. Or maybe it's a better way to look at it. The profit margin on those GoPros has to be crazy. But now you have to consider that Best Buy has their own GoPro Care. And that's the same idea. You're sending that from your house to GoPro, and then GoPro is sending you back. So I'm not sure effectively what the real difference is now between the two services,
Well, I want to throw out that I have used in the past, before I started buying GoPros at Best Buy, I was buying Xiaomi cameras on Amazon, and Amazon has, it's either Assurion, I think is the company, and they are an insurance company. You could buy aftermarket insurance. I have used them. Now, this was years ago, so it may have changed, but I bought Assurion insurance on Amazon and had good results with it. You do have to mail it off, but you take it to like your local UPS store, you put it in the mail, and like 2 days later you get an Amazon credit for the amount, and it worked pretty well for me. So maybe people should be looking at that. I'm just saying look at it. I'm not saying do it, but maybe that's the new alternative.
Greg's Baker Corner says Naked GoPro. I'm sorry. ESQ Race says, geez, I'm terrible. Ben T says, I think GoPro still needs to sell the naked version. I think that GoPro will never sell a naked version. No. I think that it doesn't make sense for GoPro's business model, their insurance, their situations. They wouldn't be able to support it. Most users would break it. I think it's just not something we'll ever see from them.
Yeah, they can't make the session work for us. Why would they make a naked GoPro work for us? Yeah. Andy Cooper says, I just fought Assurion for 4 weeks to get paid. Took 6 calls to get my money. Okay. Like I said, I used it 2-3 years ago, maybe more. It worked pretty well for me, but maybe it's not. All right. Next on the list, the Radiomaster TX12 is on sale for pre-order. Let me see if I can pull this link up and show you guys. I can't see my own screen. I only have 3 screens. Who would have thought I'd need more than 3 screens? I think the stream is seeing it now, though.
Yep.
I've used my Stream Deck to bring it up. So this is the Radiomaster TX12. For those of you who are saying, wait, that radio came out a long time ago. That was the Jumper T12. And I think it's being very generous to say it inherits the design from the Jumper T12. In other words, this is another case where Radiomaster is basically biting Jumper's design. But I think the button layout on the Radiomaster is a little better, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's also $20 cheaper. So that's something to consider. $70. The other weird thing, I'm not sure about the Jumper TX or T12, but this one has a push button, like momentary buttons on the top right and top left.
Oh, I see. The A and the D buttons here. So I can pull this image
so that's
up.
an interesting decision.
Yeah, they've got a couple other buttons. They got the nice jog wheel here.
Like, metal jog wheel.
What's the Jumper T12 look like? Now, in the chat, who was it who said it? Dave Irish says the Jumper T12 Pro is better. Better gimbals. How does the Jumper T12 Pro compare to this guy?
Yeah, I was going to say, so this is potentiometer gimbals, not Hall gimbals, for sure.
Right. The T12 Pro has Hall gimbals. But the T12, that's right. The Jumper T12 was originally made to work with deviation, and then they adapted it to OpenTX, but the freaking button layout is completely unintuitive. And it's one of the things I was bothered when I reviewed this radio.
Yep. So it looks like for like $70 right now, you can get the Radiomaster TX12 or for $90, you can get the T12, which is kind of the same radio.
Don't let
with
this
a,
price fool you. Amazon price is always marked up.
or for $100, you get the T12 Pro. And so the difference, it seems like, is other than the faceplate and the gimbals, also the TX12 and the T12 only have the light module. So they're only going to have, they have a regular JR bay in the back, but they only have the light multi-protocol module. So they're only going to have like FR Sky D8, D16, Corona, High-Tech, Futaba, RadioLink, Grotner, and Red Pine. They're not going to have the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, they don't have all of the chipsets in there.
Yeah, but
There
most
you go.
people, I
A little
think, are
comparison.
flying the stuff on that list. Maybe other than Fly
That's
Sky,
true.
it's not there.
That's true. You're probably right about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, FlySky is fairly popular. Yeah, but I think by the time you're in the $100 price point, then you're looking at like there's a base model of the Jumper T18 or the Radio Master. Although maybe you could argue that the Jumper T12 Pro with the Hall effect gimbals is a better buy. You don't have to give up as much. None of these work with Crossfire out of the box. WA, you have to buy a Crossfire module, and then then they will work with Crossfire.
Standard LiPo tray, two 18650s, USB charging. So yeah, pretty standard radio other than that. I think it's a pretty good deal for $70. Depends on what you're looking for to get in the hobby, but that's pretty cheap for a radio that's like seems like it's gonna be fairly decent.
Yeah, nice. My big complaint with the Jumper T12 was it's so small. I thought it would be like great for kids or adults who had small hands, but I think it wasn't. It didn't feel good in my hands. So, all right. Well, speaking of controllers, there's another controller that's coming potentially. The TBS Mambo has been confirmed. Let's take a look. Hang on. Let me put this on my center screen. There we go. That way I can still see the frickin'... Sorry. Seeing the sausage get made here.
Yes, we had a pull request back for the Tango 2, and they did a pull request back in September. And we had some headers that were labeled PCB Mambo instead of PCB Tango. We know Mambo from some other leaks is likely the full-size radio, and this kind of confirms that, hey, there's code in here for that Mambo. So the leak is probably correct. I think most people have a good idea that it's real, but this is kind of just confirmation that, hey, TBS is making that full-size controller. Who knows when it's going to come, but I do think we're going to see it.
This is one way that a lot of leaks happen, is that eventually, like some of the Ghost protocol stuff got leaked this way. Eventually, the vendor has to make a pull request, and it's all open source and it's all public. So you can see that this stuff is out there. So no time frame, obviously, but it looks like it's a little more than just a rumor at this point.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: if there was a radio out there with the same features, let's say, as the Tango 2, but like a full complement of switches, would you take that over? Like, what do you fly now, Blunty?
A T16.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
So would you take something like that over a T16 or a Radio Master?
Yes. I mean, it depends on what it looks like, but I know, I know what TBS's like design has been, and I know what their ideas have been like and their thought process, and I feel like I'm gonna like the full size they put out. So yeah, if I like the design and I feel like it's designed, at the price lands correctly, and it's got the built-in Crossfire, maybe even Tracer, whatever they decide to do with it, I think I will probably switch to that radio.
Yeah, I feel like the Tango 2 at a price of about $160 it's just the build quality. I mean, like, it's not that radios like the Jumper or the Radio Master are bad. Some of them have been bad, but they're okay. They're good enough, and they're cheap, and they're good value. But the Tango 2, to me, just feels like the next step up in terms of industrial design and ergonomics. It's really good. And then they sell it for $160. And it's like, sheesh. So if the Mambo comes in with that same level of quality and the same price point, it's going to be very tempting.
100%.
Let's see. Awakened FPV has held off on the Tango 2 just because of the form factor. I would like to say the same thing. I mean, I do like the Radio Master. I'm not sure if I would switch, but I would have to justify not switching. How about that? Now, 661 FPV has a very interesting idea. It says it's going to be a TBS Radio Master collaboration, and that's more plausible than it sounds because Radio Master makes the TBS Multiprotocol module.
Yep, absolutely. I 100% think that makes sense. And if they're already working there with them on it, it's really easy to spin up a new mold. TBS has made a lot of molds. So I could see them just like designing, getting the components right, moving to some of the flat switches instead of the stand-up switches that break off easy, making some thicker plastic molds. Using some of that TBS design. Probably you'll get the folding gimbals. I can't imagine why you wouldn't since they've already designed them, that sort of thing. So
I'd like to see bigger gimbals. The Tango 2 gimbals are very usable, but on a full-size radio, I think they should be bigger.
Yeah.
Andrew Young, I agree with you. The Tango 2 is a good radio, but just not quite as many switches or maybe a potentiometer. Yeah, I would be very interested in that. Okay. Next up on the list, let me pull this up. Byte is apparently not in beta anymore because the pricing is out there on Get FPV. I'm pulling that up here on the stream. You can see here the price for the kit is $368.99. Wait, price as configured. It looks like it could be as cheap as $319. Where's the extra money coming from? I'm not sure.
So we got the cam and the module, and then you can either get the small VTX or the big VTX. So it's $319 for the small VTX, $368 for the big VTX.
Okay, and the big VTX is the 500 milliwatt one, the two-board 500 milliwatt. It looks like it's listed as $70.
That's for the add-on price, and then RotorRiot listed at $100 for the.
Is that the
standalone.
not add-on price?
Yeah, for the standalone, RotorRiot has it listed for $100, so I would assume that's probably the final.
And then the
smaller VTX there is an add-on for $20. It looks like they're subsidizing about $50 out of the cost because that one on RotorRiot is $50 for the small VTX.
Yeah, that's not the add-on price. The standard price would be, so it's going to be $50 and $90 for the VTXs.
Yeah.
And then of course you got to add antennas. These antennas are the premium antennas for $20, but looks like they've got them marked down for $15. I think a fair price. If you're trying to be on a budget, $7 or $10 for an antenna is about what you're probably going to pay. So the big question, I think, is now that we know the final pricing, how does this affect the thought process about whether to go to SharkBite?
I think we're just even farther down the hole of like, we're spending DJI money. That's the way I'm looking at this, man. It's hard not to, like it's hard when you look at, I think somebody in our Discord kind of talked to me about direct marketing, indirect marketing. These are not directly competing, but indirectly, you have to consider that there's these two options. And so people are going to be considering DJI goggles or SharkBite. And I think when you look at, 150, so you get 100 for the VTX plus 50 for the camera, and then you have to add an antenna for $10. You're $160 for their version of the air unit versus $170 for the version of the air unit from DJI.
And the Vista is $140.
Right, the Vista is $140. Yeah, so you can get down to $100 for the 200 milliwatt VTX and the $50 camera.
Yeah.
Then an antenna, so 110-ish, somewhere in there, 115. So we're still getting really close to me. And then we're talking about $250 for the module, on top of, like we talked about last time, a $250 goggle is still $500. Yeah, it's just really hard for me to come to these pricing. And from what we know, these are being sold at a loss or very close to a loss.
I mean, I know the 200. I actually don't. I shouldn't say I know because that would imply I know what the cost is. I believe that the $250 bundle was sold close to cost or at a loss. I would hope that the retail isn't being sold at a loss because that would just be dumb.
Yeah, the way Greg had mentioned on RC groups was kind of like, hey, we can move forward with this and we don't have to worry too much about selling at a loss, I'm paraphrasing, because Red Cat is here, was essentially what he said in RC groups. So
you know what they say, you sell at a loss and make it up in volume.
Well, and that's why he said something to that effect, essentially, is that other tech companies have done loss leader products before, and it's not something new. I would not be surprised to see this as a loss or close to breaking even. For the amount of technology that's in these things. I mean, if you look at the amount of silicon in that module, man, there's a lot of stuff going on in there. There's a lot of work they've done, a lot of R&D.
There's an image on RC groups of the bare PCB. There's a lot going on in there.
Yeah.
What I said on my live stream yesterday, and I think it bears repeating, is if it was a lot cheaper, then it would pull people away from DJI. They would say, well, it's pretty good and it's much cheaper, so I'm going that direction. But at the price point that it's at, it isn't going to pull people away from DJI because DJI is better in most ways. It's only going to pull people who specifically want the things that SharkBite does that DJI doesn't do, like HDMI out, like the fixed latency, or just like not wanting to buy DJI because you don't like them.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just hard to recommend, I think, at this point to anyone. You know, like if somebody's asking me, like, hey, what should I buy? It's hard for me to say SharkBite when DJI is also an option, and that pilot will likely not feel the latency for the first year or two he flies.
At least.
You know, if he does, you know, that's like, I think I can still fly comfortably anywhere I go pretty much. If my, you know, that's the other thing. Something I want to talk about real quick is that I experienced for the first time in my almost year of owning the system now, an air unit that was bad. And if you have
build quality is so good.
If you have an experience with a bad unit, then suddenly you think the system is garbage. I was getting like 100 meters and lagging, stuttering, falling everywhere. I could barely fly the quad. 500 meters, it was blacking out on me. And if I had flown that, I would think DJI was horrible. And so I think digital brings these things that analog doesn't, where suddenly you have this stuttery experience. It's all laggy and weird and like, oh, that would never happen on analog. So people get weirded out by it and think, oh, this is something that could happen to me normally. But, you know, I've had one air unit out of the entire time that I've been using the system that's had this issue. And I believe it's because of antennas. I'm still diagnosing it. But
yeah.
So I just want to say, like, you know, I think that people get this latency thing going on a lot and this difference thing going on a lot. And there's really not that much. There is some, and it is variable, and it does do packet retransmission. But the amount of difference you actually feel, I think, people think is a lot bigger than it is.
Yeah, I agree. When I first got DJI, the variable latency surprised me sometimes, but in the same way that you can be flying analog and you can fly behind an obstacle and it drops out and you learn not to do that, you learn to fly around the deficits in the system, but there are also many benefits. I think that's a thing that many people have come around to agree. There's a question in the chat, is Orca working on their own system? Yes, I believe they are. Don't know more details. They have confirmed that they're working about it. We talked about that, I think, last week.
Yes.
Yeah,
they said it's going to be a ways out, and they don't really have the money that other companies do, is kind of the way they put it. But they're trying to develop an open HD system that will work like quality with their goggles. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, SharkBite pricing. I'm happy that Fat Shark is staying in the game. I will say that a big part of the cost, if they can get a better camera that's less money, you know, right now $50 for that run cam. If they can get, like, maybe the Fox here comes out at 30 or some other camera comes out at 30 that's like as good of quality or similar, then you cut $20 off that cost and suddenly it gets a lot more appealing. You know, especially if it's not the drop like Nebula to DJI camera, you know. Yeah. I wish they were pushing the cameras. I wish they were pushing a better camera, you know, an actual like real high def sensor, maybe a 1/2-inch sensor or a.
But I would say, like, don't you think they would have done that if they had the ability?
I don't know. I'm so confused by that. Why did they release with the RunCam Racer 4 a freaking nano camera as their launch camera? Why would they not have something like the RunCam Eagle, which is like a big, I think it was a 1/2-inch sensor, so bigger sensor, great big M12 lens. Why would they not come out swinging? Seems like they really shot themselves in the foot that way. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure they have a reason. All right, so SharkBite pricing. Let's see.
So next up, we've got Kabab. He's got FPVCycle has new 30 millimeter motors, recommended for 7 to 8 inches. And
my wife. Go ahead.
And nobody knows the price, or nobody knows the size. So you can measure it if you want, but he's not going to tell you. And now they're for sale. So, you know, I think this is cool, man. Kabab's been doing so much work on motors, so much work on testing. I just think it's really cool to see these actually out for sale now, and that work coming to fruition. And a lot of people are flying these, saying they're pretty cool. So I think it's just neat to see this.
One of the neatest things about this motor to me is the bearing size. Kabab has been really harping on the fact that bigger bearings make for better motors, and like we've got 9mm, 9x4 I think millimeter bearings in almost all of our FPV motors, but then you go up to 10mm bearings, like the T-motor, the iFlight Xing has 10mm bearings. It makes a big I mean, it's a heavier motor, but it does make a big difference in durability and smoothness. So he's going up to 13mm bearings.
Yeah. And he says that, you should get similar efficiency if you fly it the same way as another motor, but you get better headroom and it's just overall better flight performance. So it seems like positive. I definitely haven't flown him yet, but I know Kabab knows what the heck he's doing. That's for sure.
Yeah, he I've seen situations where Kabab, I feel like he misses the mark when he reviews a product. He usually doesn't, but I have seen, I'm like, dude, I just don't agree with you on this. I think you're just completely off base. But when Kabab talks motors, I feel like he usually is right. And if you don't agree with him, then he still can back up what he's saying. Telama42 says their Brother Hobby OEM. That's good. Brother Hobby makes good motors. He says he's arguing that 2808 is a better size for 7-inch as opposed to his 30. I bet you they have a reason.
Yeah, what I'll say is Kabab has this maybe looks like a Beautiful Mind or whatever it is spreadsheet.
Yeah, I know the one.
That's got a bunch of bubbles and notches all over the place, and he has kind of landed in over his various repeated testing, what he thinks are the right sizes for these. So he's flown and had them build a bigger stator, smaller stator, wider and thinner, that sort of thing, just over and over again with different sizes on different size props to see like what works, what desyncs, what flies properly, what burns up too fast, like all those kind of things. And there's a lot of data points on that chart. So
yeah, people are saying he actually circled it in that chart during a previous video.
Yeah,
they're saying it's 3106.5. Vendors, time to clone. Crank up the cloning machine, boys. It's a 3106.5 with a 13mm bearing. Get ready for it. Thank you, Nestor Zaharopoulos. Bashed the heck out of a Beta FPV Advanced kit. Now I'm pulling the trigger on a 2-day on a Nazgul 5 with DJI goggles. Thanks for making such great content. Thank you very much for the shout out, Nestor. Also got a $5 super chat from Imperial RC Works. Love the content and stuff that comes with it. Thank you so much. And Tony for 20 Danish kroner. What do you call a cheap circumcision? A ripoff. Hey, thank you, Tony. always down for some dad jokes. Let's see. Basically, Mr. Huggy says that it's a Brother Hobby 2806.5 just stretched out. I'm sure he has a good reason, though, right?
Wider and taller, I believe.
Yeah.
So.
Escaray says they're 7 grams heavier. Some questions about enough performance comes in and the price. Indeed. All right. Let's see what else we've got. The LePigeon 7-inch. I'm going to put it up on screen. You actually brought this. Let me see if I can just pull it up on screen so people can see what we're talking about. This is Rotor Build's page for the LePigeon 4K. What is this, Blunty?
So this is a 7-inch quad with only 4 motors designed to carry a decased BlackMagic 4K camera.
What is a BlackMagic 4K camera? Obviously I know what that is. For those who don't know, what's a BlackMagic 4K?
It is a really nice 4K camera that normally has a big case on it and is super heavy. So he's basically built a system to do cinematic footage with this BlackMagic camera on a 4-motor standard 7-inch build. I think most of these builds end up being either. Oh my god! Yeah. So it's just,
when you said decased, it's really decased.
Yeah, really decased.
What the
this
hell?
is built to case the unit separate, in the frame, sort of.
Yes. Oh my god, I'm way more impressed than I didn't. So the BlackMagic is like a $5,000, and when you say it's a 4K camera, well, you can get a 4K cheap camera this is like a cinema. It's like a very budget cinema camera.
Yeah.
But he's ripped. I wish I could see a better picture of what he's done. Are there pictures in the build?
He has video of it. I think he shows a little bit in the video, but just a really impressive build. And he's built this frame. He's selling it I believe at just like 50% above cost or something. It's like 350 or 375 for the frame. Yeah, 375 for the frame. And he tells you what he put into the frame and how much work he put into it.
Yeah.
It's pretty much a passion project at this point, and he's selling it because people ask for it. I just think it's super cool. The goal of this was to build confidence because, he talks about how, like, with a real cased camera, when you're flying any quad, even with like 8 motors on it, you're still struggling to fly that quad like a normal quad. It doesn't feel like a real quad in the air. And so his goal was to get a quad that feels like flying a 7-inch in acro and just do what he would do in a 7-inch on acro with a $7,000 camera on the top. And so he shows video of that too. And it's really cool engineering for sure. That's what Underdog says in the chat. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, that's something. I think people maybe don't, I mean, a lot of people probably do, but some people may not have a perspective on when you go up to pro grade cameras, like Andy Shen, or maybe it was Randy Slavin. I was talking to them on a bit we did for the New York City Drone Film Festival, and they were talking about the new red camera, the Komodo, which is like I think it's like a $5,000 red camera. And they were like, that's disposable. That's the red camera that's designed to go on the side of a car to replace a GoPro and just get knocked off.
Yeah.
And so like to a filmmaker, to a pro, $5,000 camera like that is just, that's like, okay, I broke it. Well, okay.
I mean, they crashed, like, I think the last Fast and Furious movie, they crashed 2 or 3 like $400,000 cars for real to get the shot. Yeah. I think it's a different world that they live in. That's for sure.
But if you're working with a BlackMagic, that is more. I mean, it is used by pros, but that's more likely to be used by enthusiastic amateurs and people just coming up. So decasing that is a real big freaking commitment.
Linus Tech Tips decased a red 4K camera to do water cooling on it in a video, and of course Linus.
Water cool everything.
And so I bet you could do similar with the red 4K the same way, So I bet you could get this consumer, like the commercial equipment, into a drone similarly and get the same kind of style. I just wonder if that's something that I have versus an 8-motor quad.
I think we would really have to turn to someone who works in the professional cinema world, because no amateurs or hobbyists are buying reds. Probably not. But it feels to me like with the BlackMagic, you're probably more willing to commit it to the quad.
Sure.
But it feels like the people who use reds, maybe they're renting it for the shoot and they're going to need to take it off the quad or move it between quads. They're probably not going to want to commit the decase. Never mind the risk of taking it apart. Anyway. I saw the stream stutter there for a second, but it seems okay. Everything okay, guys? Yeah. Tony, thank you for 20 Danish kroner. He wants to know whether you are a metal fan. You like metal, Blunty?
I'm going to disappoint a lot of people. I am not a metal fan.
So.
Yeah.
Your background is the source of your name. Want to tell people what your background is for anyone who doesn't know?
Sure. I have about 8 years in commercial cannabis, and quite a bit before that. So I come from festival, hippie background, that sort of thing. Like you, I know you've been to Burning Man. I've not been to Burning Man, but I've been to basically what a lot of Burning Man is in Florida. Yeah. So I've seen a lot of live shows, things like that. So that's kind of been my background for sure. I'm much more of a, like sort of the music you play, like electronic, fun, vibey music, whatever gets catchy, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. DJ Scott Evil says, I wonder if that dude smokes weed. I mean, his name is ItsBlunty. Yeah. And you can't make wine if you don't drink wine, right?
Yeah, big secret. Yeah, so a lot of people say that, man. I think that's really true. I think there's a lot of owners and stuff in the cannabis industry that get into it and they don't know anything because they've never even smoked the product. We had an old owner, I'll just say real quick, a while back who literally smoked when he was 19 and stopped smoking because he got too paranoid because he smoked on a hunting trip, and he owned the company at 48. So he hadn't smoked in almost 30 years and was running a commercial cannabis facility. And wouldn't you know it, the weed was total garbage, and he lost the company because he couldn't grow anything. And people who bought it loved cannabis and turned it into a beautiful company. Really, you have to be passionate about what you're doing and understand the product, or you're just never going to get anywhere. I 100% agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't just treat, it's a product that people consume. You have to be passionate about it, and you have to if you don't consume it, you got to have you got to have like a master wine taster to tell you, and that's you, right?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. As Ciotti says, his name isn't, it's prohibition. I totally agree with that.
Elvidin Zdionica says, can we get a stream on indoor growing? You might be able to on Blunty's channel, but I think you actually do that. Like, that's your actual job, right?
Yep. Yeah, I do cannabis consulting now. I used to run a grow, a 25,000 square foot, 600 light grow with 600,000 watts, if you're interested. But now
that sounds big to me.
It's very big. But now I just consult. So,
yeah. Well, maybe someday, I'm not trying to put you out, but maybe someday Blunty will do a little stream about growing if that's what he's
if you guys want one, man, I'm happy to do it. So
I will let you know if he decides to do that.
Yeah.
So. Golden FPV, thanks for a $3 super chat. I have Fat Shark Recons. Should I buy Attitude V6? The question there is if you're going to switch from box goggles to regular goggles. Some people don't like that experience. The Attitude V6 has good resolution, decent field of view, and the LCOS display is, if you compare it to like the SkyZone Skyo 2X at a similar $300, $350 price point, I think the image is bigger on the Attitude V6, and it's a 4.3 image, which I can't remember the SkyZone Skyo 2. Is it 4.3 or not? I think it's 16.9, but I'm not sure. So I think the Attitude V6 at the $350 price point is a good way to get into a goggle, especially with Fat Shark's support. But you may not like that style of goggle if you're used to box goggles. Okay. Getting back to the news. I try not to go over about an hour. So let's see. I think we're getting pretty close, though. What's next, Blunty?
Next up, we're going to talk about ExpressLRS. So UAV Tech has done a video on that, flashing it a bit, and it's been going around the community a little bit, but I think a lot of people were hesitant to flash ExpressLRS because when you go to ExpressLRS, you can't go back. And now that's not the case anymore. So now when you flash ExpressLRS, you can go to ExpressLRS and back to R9 in case something goes wrong or you don't like it for some reason. Also, if you want to like resell that equipment or something, I don't know who would want it, let's say, but maybe for ExpressLRS, they would want it. So you could also do that. And then also now there's support for slim receivers. I know that was something people wanted as well. The best thing to point out about this is just Alessandro and the team over at ExpressLRS. Those guys are just working really hard on this project. There's constant updates and there's constant movement, and he's constantly watching the feedback on it. So.
Yeah, Mark Spatz, UAV Tech, had a tutorial about how to install ExpressLRS. If you don't know what ExpressLRS is at this point, basically it's an updated firmware that you flash to FreeSky R9 modules and receivers, and it's incredibly high performance, 200 hertz, I think, maybe a little more than that. Very high, low latency, high performance, and maybe more stable than FreeSky's own firmware.
I believe ExpressLRS can do 666 hertz.
Can you do 666?
And I think they tested 1,000 hertz, but it didn't. It was like too fast for like the update rate and something else, and they had to go back down, I think.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Oh, that's more than I see. I'm glad you're here. I would have underrepresented it. Yeah. But one of the big downsides of it was that once you flashed, first of all, you had to have a special programming adapter to flash it. Now you don't, right? You can flash it from within the radio. Is that right? Or do you still need a programming adapter?
You flash it through the radio. Yeah, through the
so that's
pass-through.
Nice. Yep. And it used to be that once you flashed it, you couldn't go back to FreeSky R9, which maybe you'll never want to go back, but some people might have been hesitant. You still have to compile it, though, right?
I believe so. That's something I haven't done this yet. I would definitely go check the UAV Tech video out for that. It's on my list of things to check out, but I don't actually have any R9 hardware, so.
UAV Tech is in the chat, so he'll let us know.
Oh, yeah.
I think I usually like to wait till something is a little more user-friendly before I do a tutorial about it, but UAV Tech has a great tutorial if you're ready to dive in. Maybe if one day there's just like a nice, easier flashing, maybe. It is pretty exciting, though, for those who have. Then again, anyway, it's exciting. It's fine. 661 FPV says the max speed on 915 megahertz is 200 hertz. I see. It also runs on 2.4 gig receivers, doesn't it? They're at 1 gigahertz for 2.4 gig receivers, says UAV Tech.
That makes
something.
Sense.
I feel like there is a sort of a law of diminishing returns, though. One of the things Stingy has talked about with Tracer is the whole control loop latency is what matters. So you have latency inside your controller as it reads the sticks. It transmits the signal to the receiver through the flight controller to the motors. The camera picks up the movement. It transmits it back to the goggles. That whole control loop latency might be, let's say, 35 to 50 milliseconds. So if you cut that down, and you cut that down so your controller latency or your receiver latency is 4 milliseconds, you might still have 20 milliseconds of other latency, like in your camera or your video link. Cutting another 2 milliseconds off of that by going to 1 gigahertz may not really buy you that much. Still nice to know. Well, continuing talking about modules and stuff, RadioLink is now supported by the Multiprotocol module. What do you know about RadioLink?
Not much.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many people know, but I'm at almost 11 months in the hobby right now, so not quite a year. So I think a lot of the older stuff I didn't see a lot of. I'm not sure if RadioLink's older or not, but yeah, RadioLink is not something I have too much experience with. I've heard the name back and forth. So I did a little bit of research for this, but other than that, I don't know anybody that uses it or has any of their stuff. So
yeah, they make a really good 2.4 gigahertz radio link. Haha, hence the name. Their radios are fine, but just never got hugely popular in FPV because everybody pretty much runs OpenTX. But there are literally dozens of us people out there. Once every 4 months, somebody says, "Hey, I'm just getting into FPV. I got all these planes with RadioLink receivers. What do I do?" And now you have an answer. Frankly, people might start using RadioLink receivers because they are really good receivers. I don't know.
There was an old Rotor Riot test where I beat Crossfire at 100 milliwatts.
Well, I was on that episode. That was not it didn't. I mean, Crossfire obviously can go further.
Yes.
It was just that. Yeah, that was supposed to just be a laugh.
Either way, what I'll say is it went a lot farther than anyone I expected it to, looking at that video
really
back for a no-name receiver I've never heard of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah it's surprising. Sure. And maybe more people will start using it because it seems like it's maybe a solid 2.4 link. Goodness knows, again, like, I'm not trying to support Free Sky. So,
it didn't beat, just for the record. Crossfire can go just miles and miles and miles and miles.
For sure. Yeah.
It did really well, though. So supported now. I guess you got to update the firmware on your module. Got a video about that, of course. What's next?
Community Spotlight. So every week we're going to try to talk about some cool things in the community. And this week we're going to talk about Bastian Sondermann. This is something you use, I know, quite a bit, as the blackbox sticks exporter to get sticks on your videos, correct?
That is correct. He's got two things. We're going to look at the blackbox sticks exporter. So if you've ever exported stick overlays from blackbox viewer, it's slow as crap, and there's no batch processing. So if you have a bunch of flights you want to export, it takes forever. This is an app made by Bastian Sondermann. You can download it from GitHub. We'll put a link. I should put a link down in the video description after the show. That would be cool if I did that. Maybe I even will. But it's a really cool, you can see an example of what it looks like here.
Hello, guys.
All right. Don't need that. You can see it, and it just opens up a whole bunch of files and exports. It's transparent stick overlays, so it's a PNG with transparency, which is also the black box viewer doesn't output transparency, so you have to key out the background, which is very processor intensive and a pain in the butt. It's really, really good, and really cool that he made that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
He's
even here in the chat. Hello, Bastian. Thank you so much, man.
Nice. So let's move on to a little bit of drama to end the stream here.
Yeah,
a couple things.
I love drama.
First off, we've got iFlight might be sending out 2-piece bells as uni-bells. Might not be caring about it. So
there's this Reddit post here.
A user on Reddit. Yeah. If you believe a user on Reddit, he says he contacted iFlight after he received these 2-part bells. He talked to iFlight about it, and they said they're basically the same. They're just as strong. They should be totally fine. I don't see what the problem is. Essentially, it's a summary. He doesn't actually post the email he had from iFlight. But if that is the case, it's something to look out for, because obviously 2 parts of a bell is not going to be as strong as 1 part. Is it going to break there? Is it going to separate? That's a question you can ask yourself. I'm not really sure. I don't know that I've ever lost a motor like that. But it has to do something to the structural integrity, so it should be considered. If you pay for a uni-bell, you want a uni-bell. So why wouldn't...
Yeah. To me, that's the takeaway, is if it's advertised as a uni-bell, it needs to be a uni-bell. We can see here in this picture, this photo clearly is a 2-piece bell, and then this one is the original 1-piece bell without the seam here. We don't know. I did ask iFlight for comment this afternoon, so it was like 5 a.m. their time. They didn't get back to me in time for this stream, but that doesn't mean anything. They certainly deserve a chance to comment, and we shouldn't assume that his report of the email is necessary. I mean, like, who knows what kind of communication happened between them. How do I get off? There we go. Sure. But if you do buy one of these Xing motors, you may be getting a 2-piece bell. Does it matter?
Keep an eye out.
If I really care.
Yeah, I would say keep an eye out for it, and if it's something that matters to you, make sure you let them know, because again, like, just don't list it as a uni-bell if you're not going to send a uni-bell or send a correction. You know, you can just say, like, hey, we don't have any more uni-bells. Here's the other thing that's the same price. We're going to send you anyway. Is that okay? That kind of gets them off the hook, all that sort of thing. So
yeah, it just Underdog FPV, I'm with you. That just you got to sell what you're advertising, or you got to give a discount.
Yeah.
D Scott Devil is going to go look at his camos right now. See if they are. Yeah, depends on when you ordered it or how many that went out.
So last up, a lot of people in the chat here are talking already about it. But the FAA has said on a live stream that... So basically, they did a live stream with some kids, and they had let some people ask some questions. And a kid asked a question about drone racing under 100 feet. And so the FAA rep said, I'm paraphrasing again, but he said, essentially, what we're talking about is for like, we're not too worried about regulating things under 300 or 400 feet, or not closed circuit things like that. He said, you know, maybe still within line of sight, we would still want to regulate it, is how he put it. You know, that's completely different than the idea that they've posed forward in the NPRM and these remote ID regulations we've seen so far, and the DAC and the information they've shown us in any step of the way. You know, this is kind of the opposite of that. And so, you know, I mean, do you trust this?
I don't. I will refrain from accusing the FAA of doing anything malicious. I think the safest thing is to assume, like License to Drive suggests, is that this guy just didn't know what he was saying, or what, like, I have talked to people within the FAA and been like, so this remote ID thing is a real problem. And they're like, no, what do you mean? It's not. They don't even know what it says. Like, we know because it affects us. And they were like, no, do you understand what it actually says? So I think this guy, I mean, a one way to look at it would be that he was intentionally trying to be misleading. Let's be charitable and assume that he just didn't know what he was saying. But I would not take any hope from it until we see the actual ruling. Don't, like, breathe a sigh of relief.
Yeah, to me, this is 2 things happening. Either one, he knows a bunch of stuff and he's super informed and he's telling you exactly what's going to happen that comes out later. Or he's a clueless Carl and he doesn't have any clue what's going on. You know what I mean? Like, and to me, that's how it sounded, because he said, he implied, like, that, oh yeah, you could just have your football field or the local park or things designated as an area to fly. But from what we know from the remote ID regulations, that isn't the case. So unless it's totally different when it comes out, you know, the FRIAs are going to stop in a year. Only CBOs can make a FRIA. There's just totally the opposite of what he's saying.
Wrong way FPV. You're right. Maybe we're giving him too much credit. It was Steve Dixon, the chief of the FAA. I mean, he's the head of the FAA. If he doesn't know, okay, well then, if we're not going to, you know, be generous and assume that he was dumb, then we have to assume that he knows damn good and well what he was saying, and he was being intentionally disingenuous. If his point was, nah, you'll be able to fly at a FRIA. Well, the FRIAs can only be created for a 1-year period. And so after that, no more new FRIAs can be created. You can't just make a FRIA at a football field, at a soccer field. It has to be designated by a community-based organization like the AMA. There are all these hoops to jump through, and even if you jump through the hoops, you can only create FRIAs for 1 year and then never again. FRIAs are intentionally designed to expire and to go away, and in my opinion, they were put in specifically to fool people in the way that some people are being fooled now, and maybe he's just playing into it to go, it'll be okay, we'll just fly at FRIAs, guys, and then 3 years later, there's no more FRIAs, and suddenly everybody's like, where do we fly? Too late.
Yeah. And it's totally possible that the rule will come out completely differently, but we have no reason to give. I don't see any reason to give the FAA that credence or whatever. Like, I don't think they have we should give them the, like, we shouldn't trust that. And the other thing that I'll say is, like, just because he's the head of the FAA does not mean he knows anything. I don't know if you've ever interacted with the government or interacted with any governmental body or anything, but the people who work in the government and the people who work as the heads of departments do not know anything about the department. The reason you have 10 people under them in the department is because they're doing the job. I've interacted a lot with cannabis reform and cannabis law with local lawmakers and legislators and the Department of Environmental Health, Department of Agriculture in Colorado. They don't know their head from their ass, and it doesn't matter if it's the director or not. Information doesn't get everywhere. People don't know all the rules. That guy's got a lot of work to do. So expecting him to know exactly what the remote ID regulations are is something I would expect. Yeah.
So, I mean, Bruce's take, XJet's take on it was maybe things are going to be better, but I watched bits of it and I'm like, this is just some FAA guy doing a PR push to taking questions from school kids, and I'm waiting for that lawsuit to go.
If it's going to be better, it's better. If it's not going to be better, then we need to be thinking about it not being better. And I'd much rather take the stance of, like, hey, until we see something, let's err on the side of caution here, and let's assume that this is going to be a law that's not going to benefit us in any way.
Oh, you never know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is, I think, the last item for the stream. Is that right, Blunty? We got no more?
that's I think that's it.
Nestor Zaharopoulos, thanks for a $2 super chat. What permits or licensing do you need to use Crossfire? I don't think you need any. I think you shouldn't need a ham license or anything. I don't think.
Crossfire is now FCC certified, I think. Maybe all the V1 stuff wasn't technically, because all the V2 stuff now has the caps on it and things to make it legal. But I think everything went through FCC certifications.
Yeah. Tony, thanks for $20, 20 Danish kroner. How to tell when a motor is at the end of its life. In my experience, it's usually the bearing going out that indicates the end of the life. It gets kind of, you get shudders, you get gyro twitches from the vibrations. Maybe it just sounds really rough instead of smooth. So that's what I would say. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this week's live stream. Thank you, Blunty, for helping out. Blunty's channel is linked in the video description. If you want to check him out, you're doing tutorials and stuff over there. Maybe a little live stream about marijuana grows.
Yeah, absolutely, man. If you guys want it, I'm happy to do it. So
awesome. Yeah. If you guys have any news items that you think should be on the stream, email to news@fpvknowitall.com, and we will see you back here next week, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Happy flying, everybody.
Take it easy, guys.